Hi guys.
Hi there, welcome back. We're Monday night myth busting tonight, and tonight we're talking about why we don't want to let stress make you overweight, sick, or unhappy. Okay, so welcome back. I'm Dr. Carolyn George. This is Leslie Harrington,
Hey guys.
transformational health coach, and there's Ellen's watching us. Please just kind of shout out and let me know if there's any particular piece of this conversation that you want to make sure that we address, because it's a really huge conversation. We've only got 30 minutes tonight, and it is a big rabbit hole we're diving into right now. So I want to kind of focus this in whichever way the people watching are interested in, where they have the most questions. So the first thing I wanted to say is that stress is actually a relatively recently development. It wasn't until I think it was the 40s or 50s when Hans Selye from Montreal, he was a researcher there, coined the term stress, and he looked at animals and what was happening to them when they were put under different stressful situations, and then he looked at some of the different hormones that were affected when these animals were put in these difficult situations. Since then, we've come light years in terms of understanding stress, but we still don't know it all. So there's a lot to go over. So first, eustress. That is the term that we use for good stress, because there is good stress. It's not all bad stress. So when you get up in the morning and you're anticipating your wedding, huge stress, but that's a good stress. If you're an actor and you're going on stage, another eustress.
Diving with sharks?
Diving with sharks, that's another great eustress, yes. But there's tons of different ways that we can have good stress in our life, and it tends to make us more productive. We're kind of working at our best because we're kind of heightened in terms of our sensations, and so that can be really useful. In fact, we need that. We memorize things better when we're under stress. We perform better generally under a little bit of stress. But then you go a little bit higher, and it's not so good. So there's a very fine line. And Leslie and I were just talking about this. It's not the same for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody has a little bit of that tolerance level, and it has a lot to do with your perception, right? But to Dr. George's point about, cortisol is actually really critical. It's important for us to have it. So when people are like, I remember when cortisol first kind of started being talked about, and I started maybe paying attention, it was kind of like, but you need it, but you don't really need that much, and if you have too much, it's bad, but if you have enough, and really, that's like your body's way. It's actually helpful, like to your point of the eustress, and even when it's not eustress, and it's something that is distressing, your body is allowing you to kind of cope and do what it needs to do, and kind of shut down other organ systems, and kind of bring the glucose and get things going in your body in a productive way, to be able to handle that. The idea is to go back to homeostasis, and when you remove yourself from that stressor, to be able to go back into balance. And with society today, we're just not adapting, and we shouldn't be, quite frankly, adapting to this new way of life, because it's unhealthy, and it's a little scary that society kind of demands. We get this badge of honor for the crazier you are and the busier you are and the less sleep you get. That's not really a sign of toughness. That's a sign of you're really not taking care of your body and living healthy.
And many professions do that. The medical profession is one, the legal profession is another that we think about. But business, the stocks and bonds, all those areas where they're kind of trading money and other things, they go. And so they talk about the first few years in doing business administration and working for companies, and you're getting no sleep. Well, that is not how you want to make decisions, right? You don't want to have a brain deprived of sleep and energy and working on distorted neurotransmitters, making these kind of good decisions. So although it is culturally accepted right now, I'm hopeful that people will start to recognize that this is not healthy. It might be normal, right, common, but it's not healthy. And so this is something that you're going to have to change one by one as you kind of demand better life situations at work and in your home.
And unfortunately, as you get older, it becomes more evident that from the people that I see. On the flip side, I think our teenagers and the kids are under so much pressure. I see so many more, we didn't have 5.0s when I was going to school, Just the stress that kids take on, and the amount of pressures in school and the testing that they do and in colleges and things like that. I mean, it's just really over the top.
Yeah, and that can be a whole other conversation. Actually, it would be a good one to have just for teens and people going into college, because they've got to have all of their volunteer hours. They've got to have started their own app. Started a business. They've got to be a competitive athlete, plus have 5.0s, right? It's not just one thing.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But for tonight, we want to kind of dive into stress and what is it. And so one of the key things I want you to take home, that it is not the stress that's the problem. It's how you interpret it. So you can have two people in exactly the same situations, and one is kind of more laid back and accepts it and oh, this is a challenge, I'm just going to see what I can do with this. And you can have another person go, oh, well, this is the end of my life. This is world stopping, and I don't know how I'm going to handle this, and maybe I'm not going to. And it can be completely the same issue, right? Whether it's how am I going to pay a bill, a medical diagnosis that you get, that your computer's not working, right? So it can be really, really, really tiny things, and that's why they write those books, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff, because it really, in the scheme of things, most of it is. Yeah. So when you're thinking about your stress, think, how is it that I'm handling it, right? Everybody's going to have some stress, but it's really how you manage that stress. It's what you do with it. Do you think of this as a challenge, or do you think of this as incapacitating? Are you ready to kind of problem solve it, or does it stop you short in your tracks? Yeah. So that can really make a huge difference. And so how does one person become the kind of person that looks at things as a challenge versus something that's going to be the end of them? It has to do with all those foundational things. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating healthy? Are you exercising? What do you do to restore yourself? Do you do a lot of self-care? So, it sounds really simple and hokey, but it's huge.
Yeah, it's kind of the things you're doing behind the scenes.
Right.
So then when it comes to the action, when you're in the real scene, in the real life situation, you've kind of done all the work, and now you just need to apply it. When it comes to breathing, and it comes to, like people are like, I don't understand this meditation thing. But when you have that control of being uncomfortable and being able to sit and breathe through things that are uncomfortable, then when you're in a situation that's truly uncomfortable, you're able to kind of manage your way through it. And it's about managing your energy a little bit too, because your body needs to kind of have the energy going in different directions. So if you're using all of your energy all of the time with the stress, you're taking away from your body's ability to do the restorative things it needs to do, not just when you're sleeping, but even in the daytime. Digestion, like letting your blood flow properly, like things like that. I like to think of it in my mind, like, where do I want to apply my energy right now? How much do I want to give to this?
Right.
Yeah. So especially when someone heats you up and you get frazzled by another person,
right?
Your interpretation is really how much are you going to give to that moment or that situation.
Exactly, and that's huge, right? To try not to take things that other people say personally, and just kind of let it be and let them deal with their own stuff, because that's usually what it's about. It's not usually about you, and we tend to get all hot and bothered, and why did they say that, and how did they think that, and it's just like, okay, chill, that's that's not a fight I'm going to fight today. So just kind of letting that pass, but it takes time, and it takes energy and planning to kind of be there. You have to really go through the drill. And you have, actually, I love, Leslie talks about when you're anxious and you go through that dress rehearsal of what's going to happen if this happens, what am I going to do if that happens, and you have this whole little dress rehearsal for these terrible things that you're sure are going to happen, and of course they never do.
Predicting outcomes, I call that.
Right, they never do. But there are dress rehearsals that are good to do. So when you're, for example, sitting in meditation or doing some mindfulness, that 10 or 15 minutes or longer, if you like, that you're doing that helps you to be prepared for when you're off the mat, when you're in a situation where somebody says something or does something that's wholly inappropriate. And then rather than just striking out with words or actions, you've got a couple minutes, you can take a couple breaths, and okay, this is how I want to handle this. And you can really, have a much more measured response rather than a reaction. So that's, I think, one of the number one things that are important to try to bring into your daily life is some form of restorative behavior whether that's a guided meditation, a breathing meditation, singing. I mean, there's all different ways to
even
kind of
just simple breathing techniques.
Simple breathing
At red lights.
Right.
You can reset your body, you know, that parasympathetic nervous system, like that more rest and digest, kind of the opposite of what was driving cortisol. And you can kind of reset that through different things that you do through the day. Like little things make a big difference. And like, you know, a tiny bit of meditation can actually offset hours of stress, you know, at the workplace or whatever. And what you were saying before about that dress rehearsal, you'll hear me repeatedly talk about the news and about when we watch the news and have things immediately we internalize and we start to stress about, oh my gosh, what if that was me? And those things are just so traumatic on our bodies and on our minds that you just that's an easy thing to just let go and set aside.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just a little background too on cortisol. So we've kind of mentioned cortisol a few times for this. So how does it play in? So when you're stressed, when you perceive something that's, you know, not going your way and you decide to get stressed about it, not that you purposely decide, but it just kind of is one of those internal things, right? What happens is your body is thinking, okay, is she running from a tiger? Does she need to have lots of energy to do this? And so it pumps out a lot of adrenaline, and then after a little while you get some cortisol, all in an effort to help you have everything you need to survive the moment. So the cortisol and adrenaline get the blood flowing to the places that allow you to fight or to run. And then it also mobilizes up a lot of sugar so that you've got some energy to fight or to run. Okay, again, your body doesn't know that it's just because your boss said something that ticked you off. It's responding in an evolutionary way so that you're ready to fight or flight, because that's what got us to be where we are right now. We evolved and we survived the tiger running from us because we had quick responses. So that adrenaline, you know, dilates your eyes so you can see better. There's a lot of physiologic things that go on.
Yeah, and it's shutting down some of the systems that are unnecessary.
Exactly.
So, to allow that extra energy to go where it needs to go. And you know, in the old days, you come to safety and you're done. Like you kick back and you're done. Like us, it's, you know, constant, oh, my kid just texted, or, you know, you've got your phones
Never
and you've
stops.
got, it's just never stops. It's, what is it, 50 times a day was one of the statistics I heard, that we're setting off an internal fire alarm in our body. Mm-hmm. And that's absurd, 50 times a day. I mean, that gives you very little time for your body to do restorative things, because when you're in
enjoy life.
Exactly, and be present. When you're in this type of fight or flight stance, your body, you physically can't be doing the productive, restorative things that your body needs to do. You can't have both. You can't be doing this chaos thing and still be, oh, let me over be healing your body and, you know, helping you digest and helping you do all these other things. And you can't do it all. Can't have it all.
Right, exactly. So what, again, going off that, so that cortisol starts a whole cascade of things. And so that cascade becomes some of the things that you have to watch out for if you're chronically under stress. So when you're under that stress, what's going to happen to your body? If you're raising that sugar level, if you're raising that cortisol level, you're going to gain weight. You're going to start to put on belly fat. You're not going to sleep very well. You're going to have problems with your bones. Actually, osteoporosis is more common. Issues with your memory. Actually, the cortisol shrinks the memory areas of your brain and increases the amygdala, which is the place in your brain where you feel fear. And it increases the connections in that amygdala. So it's like that dress rehearsal over and over and over again. It's enhancing those connections. So you get more connections in that area, which makes the smallest little trigger set it off, right? So what you pay attention to,
yourself to
right? What you pay attention to always grows. So the things that you can do to help calm yourself, to not make those networks grow, are going to be the things that help you. And so those are things that are calming, like the meditation, the mindfulness, the breathing. And we'll really get into some of these things at the end, but we just want you to see that there's a lot of things that can be done. It's not like, you know, you have to sit on the top of a mountain under a tree, right?
Realistic things.
Right, realistic things. We know we can't avoid stress, but it really is very much how you deal with it. And then knowing that if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't get the sleep, if you don't eat healthy, if you don't avoid toxins, you're going to have more issues with that. And they are actually under your control. So this is all about personal responsibility and making those tough choices to do things that aren't always easy to do, like eat healthy or go to bed at 10 o'clock or avoid being around somebody who smokes, or, there's many different ways that we can look at this. But it's really important that you understand there are a lot of things you can do to personally help to manage your stress better and help your body to be more nourished, more restored.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you were talking about, I think sometimes people think stress is, we talked a little bit about good stress, and stress being like, oh, it's a chaotic day. Stress can be the foods that you're eating that your body's not agreeing with. It can be the environmental toxins you talked about, exposure. There's all kinds of things that could be stressful to your body that you're not necessarily in tune with. The other thing I want to touch on really quick is I did this great biofeedback when I was at a place before, and the guy hooked me up to all these things, and it measured your heart rate and your sweat and your blood pressure. And what was neat was he had me visualize like a really kind of like the worst time in your life, stressful thing. And you could see all of these physiological changes that were happening in my body. And then on the flip side, he had me imagine like the most pure joy place that I could be, the most pleasurable, in everything just kind of came to a calm. And it was basically somewhat of like that proof and awareness that even when like sometimes you mentally might think that you got this and like it's not a stressful situation, because you kind of get used to things after a while. You get used to a certain pace. Your body is still experiencing things. They're still going to have the changes that are still generating cortisol and asking your body to react that you may not mentally be connected to. So getting in tune with that is a really big deal. And then just being aware of, you can take yourself out of that. And that's what meditation really does, is it teaches you to create scenes and things in your mind that calm you. You can use those in situations like that. You can kind of take yourself back down.
Right. And just a side note too, meditation is very good about that, because meditation is bringing you back from the future or the past. Anxiety is always concern about the future, worry about the future, and depression is sadness or regret about the past. But meditation brings you right here, right now, to your breath, to a chant that you're doing, to whatever you're doing. And meditation doesn't just mean those things. It's not just breathing exercises or chanting, but really anything that allows you to really be in the moment.
Yeah.
So rock climbing, that's a meditation. If you are not firmly on the side of that cliff and holding on and thinking about being on that side of that cliff, if you're
going
thinking,
down.
you're going down, right? Exactly. So that's a meditation.
And I think that's why sometimes people connect yoga with being something, because you have to be mindful to keep your balance and to be really in your body.
Right,
And even sometimes it's the instructor or the commentary that's going on. I find that with Pilates, because it's I'm always focused on what I'm supposed to be feeling.
Right.
And you're present. You're completely in the moment and just experiencing. We're such human doings and not human beings anymore. We don't ever just stop and be where we are at the moment. So it's pretty cool when you do it too, because it's like kind of, whoa, when's the last time I did that,
Right. And so anything, you can even do the little coloring books.
Yeah,
that can be a meditation.
coloring books.
So there's many different ways to achieve the same thing, and there's a whole bunch of different apps, which we'll tell you about in a few minutes. But I just wanted you to know that you don't have to, you don't have to do that. You can. I mean, that's a great thing to do. And actually, that vibration, when you make the chanting Om sound, that causes a vibration, and that vibration, actually, and they've studied this, there's actual research on this isn't voodoo kind of stuff, but that chanting and the vibration stimulate your vagus nerve, and your vagus nerve is the parasympathetic, the relax, rest, and digest nerve. And so any kind of vibration like that can be really useful. So singing can do the same thing, depending on, of course, what you're singing and the mood you're in. So so there's many different ways to have that endpoint achieved.
Awesome.
Yeah. A couple of the things I just wanted to mention. So with high cortisol, and we're talking about getting overweight and getting depressed, so how does that happen? So that high cortisol actually decreases our serotonin. Our serotonin is our happy hormone. and it decreases our dopamine. And the dopamine is our motivation hormone. So when we go to Facebook and we get a whole bunch of likes, that's a dopamine hit that we're getting each time. When we go out with friends and they tell us how cute we are, that's a dopamine hit. So we can get this in a variety of different ways. But if you're in that high cortisol, and so your body's serotonin and dopamine are low, women tend to get more depressed and anxious. Men tend to get a little bit more irritable. They can have more ADHD. They can have impulse control issues. So they tend to act a little bit differently. And both of us, both male and females that is, tend to then go for things that give us that dopamine. And so that can then mean that we're drinking more, that we're doing drugs, that we're gambling, that we're doing things that give us that dopamine hit. And so it can really lead to a lot of destructive behaviors, which then further worsen the whole, and the cycle worsens. So just when you're starting to understand physiologically what's going on with the stress and with the cortisol, then I think it helps so that you can start to make a break in that cycle. And you go, oh, that's why I'm going out and doing that. And maybe I need to not do that. Maybe I need to just spend some quiet time at home listening to some music, or go out with some friends and watch a funny movie, or do something else that helps to bring up the serotonin and the dopamine without all these other more risky and events with negative self-outcome.
Yeah, I think we were going to talk a little bit about sleep too, and why some people, like I said, literally cortisol will keep you awake at night. So a lot of people tell me all the time they have trouble not just falling asleep, but waking up in the middle of the night, going back to sleep, and understanding that the cycle, the hormone cortisol and melatonin kind of work with a teeter-totter effect. So when your cortisol is high, your melatonin's low, and ideally at night, your melatonin's on the higher side and your cortisol's low. So there's things that can raise the cortisol at nighttime, one of which would be exercising too late. Even just the lighting can affect your cortisol levels, so your circadian rhythm with the blue light. We talk about these things a lot when it comes to self-care, when it comes to stress, when it comes to overall. So you're going to start to hear that repetition, and it's because it's very meaningful. But the cortisol is often a reason that you're waking up in the middle of the night and then not going back to sleep, especially if you're doing that, oh my gosh, what do I have to do in the morning, or what did I miss doing today? That kind of takes you, again, back to the past or the present, and you've got that, worry and...
Right. Yeah. Which aren't getting you any place. I always say it's kind of like you're in a rocking chair, moving, back and forth, but getting no place. So when you're starting to really get really anxious, just kind of visually think of yourself as rocking back and forth in that chair and really not getting any place.
Yeah, and I like to think of too, like, what do you have control over in that moment? Like, what can I truly do? And when you're in bed at night and you're worried about an email you need to write the next, like, you can't do anything about it right then, and it's not going to be helpful even if you tried. So when I relinquish that control in my mind, I tend to it kind of settles, It's like, you know what, you just got to give some of it away. Yeah. You can't just constantly be holding on to everything.
Right. And so Michelle asks, so Facebook before bed probably raises cortisol, especially in women. I tried to stop looking at Facebook after 9. Well, it actually can affect two things. So depending on what you're reading in your stream, it can certainly raise cortisol. But sometimes when you're getting a lot of likes, it can give you that dopamine pat. So that's why a lot of people really like to go and see how many likes did I get, how many people answered me, right?
It's crazy the research they're doing on that.
Yeah, so it can do both, but I think we would both agree that turning off your Facebook, turning off your computers in general, but specifically Facebook before you go to sleep would be a good idea, at least a half an hour or so before, so you can start to chill.
Yeah.
Just relax, read, listen to music, have a conversation with your partner, whatever it is.
Well, and there's a couple comments going by about dancing in the sheets. So yes, in fact, that would be something that would lower cortisol. Probably maybe both, right?
Right, yeah. And definitely give you that dopamine.
Yep.
So a lot of good things there. And little GABA afterwards. GABA is a hormone that relaxes you. It's the kind of, relaxation one. So, yeah, dancing in the sheets gives you a little bit of everything. 2 things you do in
your bed. You sleep and you mate.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
So, yes, and then speaking of hormones, we want to connect a little bit too with the depletion of hormones and how cortisol and too much of it and chronic stress can ultimately kind of, I like to say, rob Peter to pay Paul, because it essentially can steal from the production of your sex hormones, your reproductive hormones, in order to keep up with this constant need for cortisol.
Right.
So you see that a lot in practice. You see that a lot in the
Absolutely. And so, like, a little piece here to understand is that in physiology, Mother Nature doesn't waste anything. So we have one molecule that's progesterone, and that molecule then can become cortisol. It can also become testosterone, and testosterone then becomes estrogen. So there's a flow. So nothing is ever wasted. I mean, Mother Nature is pretty amazing. So your prime directive is survival. So if you've got these molecules starting to come through and they ultimately can make cortisol and you're under stress because a lion's chasing you or a tiger's chasing you or something bad is happening, your body's always going to default to taking and creating that cortisol so that you can do what you need to do. You can run, and your eyes are going to see, and you're going to hear, and you're going to really kind of shift everything so that survival is your number one end game. So when you're doing that, you don't need to reproduce. You don't need to digest. These are secondary things. So it shuts off all of your sex hormones, cuts off the blood to your gut. All of these secondary things are really very secondary to the prime directive, which is survival. So when you're under stress, your body makes cortisol, and it stops making the sex hormones. Your testosterone, your estrogen generally will go down in amounts. You'll lose your libido. You'll have no sex drive. This is what we call the cortisol steal or pregnenolone steal. It's got different names, but it really means the same thing.
Yeah.
So doing something as simple as relaxing and laughing then tells your body, oh, you're safe. Okay, I don't need to make so much cortisol. I got a little bit extra I can give over here to my testosterone and my estrogen. So thinking about that, really those small things make a huge difference in terms of what your body's doing physiologically.
Yeah, I like that. Where you just, if you're thinking in your mind, how can I kind of let my body know I'm safe?
Yeah.
You know, ask yourself that.
Right. That's a key thing.
Good trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of your favorite apps for stress reduction?
Oh, for me, I love a couple different meditation apps. There's actually a podcast called the Meditation Minis. For people who are just learning to do meditation, sometimes they get, you know, like Dr. George said, people expect it has to be in this perfect setting and you have to be sitting a certain way. And, you know, ideally in these really pure practices and things like that, you know, that's what they do. But in a functional society and trying to implement it into our everyday lives, realistically, it's really a matter of bringing yourself to the present. So wherever that has to take place, it's, you know, sitting in a chair. Again, you can implement breathing techniques in your car, things like that. But when it comes to meditation, I love a podcast called Meditation Minis, and it's guided. And that for me was really profound, because it's someone that is walking you kind of through a scene, and your imagination gets really creative, and you kind of find yourself like, she'll kind of give you these imagine this, this, and this, and then you all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where did my head take me there for? And it's really cool because you're so in it. That was one, for me, guided meditation is very powerful. You know, I have my little Muse device, which is that headband that measures your brain waves, and you kind of hear birds chirping and things like that. That's a great introductory way. It's called the Muse, and it is it's actually available. It's kind of like a Fitbit for the brain. It helps you to kind of see what your brain's doing while you're trying to stay calm and redirect back. So as your mind's wandering, and that's the other thing, your mind wandering is normal. So trying to shut your mind, I can't shut off my mind. You're not supposed to shut off your mind. That's like asking your heart to stop beating. Your mind is going to go. It's just a matter of being present and kind of objectively observing your thoughts as they go by, and letting them go, you know, and just kind of, I like to either, like my Cindy does with the kids, my friend teaches young kids, and she does like fish in the water and how the fish go by, and the kids meditate, and it's so cute. I like to think about clouds, you know, when clouds are floating by. And an app would be the Headspace app is a great one. They do like a 10-day little intro thing. Yep, I like that. Really good one. They kind of talk you through meditation. They teach you a little bit about what it's supposed to mean. There's another one, Calm is another app. Right.
Those are all good ones. Heart Math.
Yes.
Heart Math is an awesome one. There's different varieties of that, but generally...
Inner Balance? The one with the ear.
Interbalance, yeah, you can clip it to your ear, and what it's doing is measuring your heart rate variability, which is tied to the activation of your vagus nerve. And so that is one I really like for people who really feel like they need to do something, because it's not just sitting there, you're actively doing something, you're trying to breathe according to a pattern that they set up for you, and you're trying to make, sometimes you can make a little garden light up, depending on again, which version you get, but it's very much a doing kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they've got lots of research behind them. They are working with the VA and the vets with PTSD to help them.
Yeah.
But that really works with that heart rate variability, which is a form of biofeedback. So lots of information on that. So just www.heartmath.com.
Yeah, you can buy the little earpiece on Amazon.
Yeah,
I have that. It's an app called Inner Balance.
Yeah, and so that's good. Holosync, I like that.
That one
That's
I'm not trying.
just kind of rain and then some bells tinkling.
Okay.
And you can try that out. They'll usually give you a few days of a sample before you purchase that. So that's another thing that helps, is to focus. But breathing is great. There's all different kinds of breaths. And in the Ayurvedic world, the Indian medicine world, they've got a variety of different breaths that can achieve different things. There's a shining forehead breath, and of course the Om breath, and I can't remember all the different names. Yeah.
The 2 times breathing.
Right, and the alternate nostril breath. So there's different ones, and the Ujjayi breath. So there's a whole variety of different breaths that can be energizing or calming. You can buy webinars, books. There's lots there. One of my favorites, excuse me, was made more. Was really created actually by John Kabat-Zinn, and that's a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which is usually about an 8-week course, and is great because once a week you're going in and doing this with a group of people, but you're meditating every day, and it teaches you a lot of different tools that you can then take from the mat, off the mat, into the real world. And so that's one of my other favorites. But I mean, I think we're just throwing out ideas so that you can experiment with them and see what you find works for you.
Yeah,
that's really
the key. What's going to make you actually participate and do? My Kristen writes 10% Happier is another good app. I didn't know they had an app. There's a book called that. Yeah, and it was a good concept. I heard about it on a podcast, but I'll check that one out. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. And Terry says that she tried an experiment and turned off the computer after dinner to help her sleep. Yeah, and absolutely.
That is very measurable. I whenever I'm on later than I want, even I do wear the orange sunglasses, but even when I do, I feel a huge difference, and I measure my sleep with a sleep app, and I see a difference. Mm-hmm. So the blue light is pretty powerful. So that's a great habit to take on, Terry.
Right.
And Michelle says, what was the last one? John
Zinn, Z-I-N.
Z-I-N.
He's up in Boston, and he's got 30 years of work. He's one, and I could talk about his stuff for forever, but he's the one who's done the PET scans, the positron emission scans. He's done them of monks while they're meditating, and he sees the brain waves that they create, and has looked at neuroplasticity in these guys, and then looked at everyday people to see just about how much meditation do we need to be doing to start achieving some of these measurable effects. And it's really not so much. You can really do it in about half an hour, 45 minutes a day, but consistency is the key.
Does it have to be at one sitting, or can it be staggered?
No, it can be staggered, yeah.
So it's a kind of total.
But he's written many books. He's got CDs. He's got all kinds of stuff. And Saki Santorelli works with him, and he does some great videos too. And so there's Tara Brock is great.
Ziva meditation.
Ziva meditation, she's good. There's also
Z-I-V-A.
Yeah, and Pema Chodron. I love some of hers.
How do you spell that?
Pema, P-E-M-A, and then Chodron, C-H-O-D-R-A-N, I believe. And then Thich Nhat Hanh. He's got some great walking meditations.
Awesome.
He's a Vietnamese Buddhist. Yeah. So there's tons of stuff out there. There's plenty. Google it, YouTube it. There's a lot of good stuff. Get your sleep. Of course, eat healthy, right? Staying away from chemicals in your food and trying to eat lots of those plant-based, green, leafy veggies. Actually, eat the whole color of the rainbow, not just the greens, but greens are good. and laugh. Go out with girlfriends.
Dance,
laugh, sing, play music. These are all things that really help. And as weird as it sounds, they help you lose weight because they're decreasing your cortisol level. And I cannot tell you how many patients that we've worked to cut their diet down, we've worked to do all kinds of things, and it wasn't until they finally got that they needed to relax and have fun that they started to lose weight. So, for everybody, the weight thing is a little bit different, but if you're stuck with your weight or you're stuck with your sleep, look at your stress.
Absolutely. It's a low-hanging fruit.
Yep, exactly.
It's not easy to fix all the time, but changing that perception and working and really practicing on it is
letting go.
It's absolutely worth. Yes, coffee with the girls. That's Cindy.
Coffee with the girls is
that's my refuel for the week.
Oh yeah, love that.
Fills your soul.
Right, absolutely. And one of the last books that I really love is excuse me, The 4 Agreements.
Yes.
And so that one,
the 5th agreement, you turned me on to. Right. I just read. So I'd read 4th a long time before,
right.
And the 5th one's cool too.
Yeah, no, it's good. So look it up, and because we're running out of time here, but these are all great books to help give you some ideas. Another one, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Another great book. Sapolsky is the author. So if you like to read, great. There's CDs for all of these, so if you want to listen, then that's good too. Or sometimes just sit quietly and listen to your own intuition, right? Listen to your own body and see what it's telling you, because it can tell you a lot.
Yeah. Listen to the whispers. Don't wait for the screams.
Right, exactly. Anyways, thank you guys very much. And hi, Leanne. It's miss you too. And looking forward to seeing you guys. Now, next week, we will let you know. Leslie's going to be away, so we're going to see if we can manage to do that by the split screen again. So we will put out an email to tell you if we're going to actually have one next week, or we'll wait till the week after. Okay?
Yes. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free, and we'll always answer them after.
Send us questions, send us ideas for other Facebook Lives, and give us those thumbs up, get our dopamine going, okay?
Absolutely. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night, guys.
Thanks.